Okay, we're getting serious now. How you going? Welcome back to Bootlosophy, and my name is Tech. I'm in Perth on Wajak Nonga Buja, Kayakori Kwajebe, Kayakori Bodabe. Today, I'm pulling out this pair of tanks from Nicks, their Overlander boot, in a new leather made for them by Horween called Spokane. Now, this is not a first heritage boot for new boot buyers. This is a serious boot in all forms of that word. And even I have to admit, I had to graduate to these boots despite owning for many years their collaboration Falcon with Parkhurst, built on Parkhurst's 602 last. Even my beloved 4 pairs of White's MP boots, I readily admit to being tough, but casual as compared to this pair. Let's take a look at the style and design of the boot. Nicks has always been known for making tough work boots like their Builder Pros, Packers and Rangers. Even when they soften the hard work boot designs into what they call legacy boots like the Falcon and the Americana, there's no denying the work bootability of those models. Indeed, you can, and people like me would wear them casually, but any manual laborer could pick up one of these and feel comfortable with them as work boots. You can take a look at the variety of their work-based designs on their website, and I've put an affiliate link down below. On their website, they describe this as the perfect boot for your daily wear, designed for hiking, camping, and hard work. It is an 8-inch boot. This one is built on their moderate arch HNW last with a plain, rounded, and anatomically shaped toe. I'll go into the details of the construction later on, but aesthetically, with the chunky Vibram V100 Commander sole holding up a slab of midsole and everything else inside, it looks built for work, hiking trails, or fighting zombies. The Spokane wax flash uppers, firm initially, soften to hug your feet and patina gracefully. Despite the moderate arch, the heel is already 50 millimeters tall, and the 8-inch shaft creates a purposeful curve around that heel counter cover and up the back of the leg. I call this my Kim Kardashian bootie. Now, before we go any further, you need to know that Nicks reached out to me after they saw my videos, reviewing their first version of the collaboration with Parkhurst. And then they offered me this boot for free in return for a review of the boot and their new Spokane leather. There were no other strings attached, so what follows is my as unbiased as possible opinion. And about here is where I usually talk about what you might wear the boots with, what outfits. Looking at these, that seems a bit superfluous. These are not boots you wear to a formal or even informal but dressy event. These are boots you wear for work or to go exploring and on adventures. So obviously jeans and 5-pocket pants, comfortable and warm tops, and that's all I'll say about outfits. So let's talk about the brand. My more experienced boot collecting and boot wearing viewers will know the Pacific Northwest brand well, but I'll briefly talk about them for new viewers. The Pacific Northwest refers to the northwestern corner of the US, pushed up against that northern Pacific Ocean. What these P&W boot brands like White's, Nicks, Dana, JK's, Drew's, and more recently Truman, what they represent in the boot world is the making of boots responding to the industry in the American Pacific Northwest states of Washington and Oregon in particular, and to some extent Idaho. And if Americans allow their geographic familiarity, Canadian British Columbia, and hence the addition of Viborg into the list. Looking back at the development of America, these states represent carving out new territories with heavy lumber production, construction in the cold, wet weather, railroads, and all those peripheral mountain cowboy images we see in our minds. Added to that in the 20th century are the raging forest fires that are fought by firefighters and forest rangers who are sometimes parachuted into the areas on fire. This history of industry and use explains why P&W brands represent work boots, outdoor boots, and protective boots. There is not as much need for a pair of Tricker's country boots to go grouse shooting, nor slim R.M. Williams Chelsea boots to brush up and meet the boys with. The history of Nicks itself, oh by the way, Maddeningly, for a grammarian and pedant like me, Nicks dropped the apostrophe in the name a while ago and are referred to as Nicks with no apostrophe. The history of Nicks itself started in Spokane, Washington State in 1964 by a Russian immigrant shoemaker called Nikolai Blahuchin as Nicks Shoe Shop with an apostrophe. The original Nick actually worked for Whites before transitioning into his own business with the enduring legacy, even in the current business, for making the boots from scratch from start to finish by hand. Nicks has changed hands several times. In 1980, taken over by Gary Myers. In 1991, bought by Nick Petrilli. And after a few more changes and various partners involved, the business was bought by current owners, the Mao family, and today is run by Charlotte Mao. All these successful owners were from people who worked in the business, so its legacy is continuous. An interesting footnote is that as Nicks was spawned from Whites because Nikolai worked there, Nicks itself has spawned brands like JK's from the owners of JK's originally being part of their management mix. Let's now take a look at the construction, but before we do, let me remind you to click on like if you're liking the video so far, and if you're not subscribed, go on, just do it. Okay, construction. And this time, instead of my usual bottom-up approach, I'll go from the top down because of this new Spokane leather. Spokane leather is derived from Horween's chrome pack leather, especially for Nicks. Chrome pack, similar to Chrome XL, has been used right up to the 1980s, I believe, as gasket seals in engines and mechanical parts. Now, apparently artificial seals like rubber fail quickly and catastrophically, while leather seals fail gradually, and experienced drivers and machine operators can apparently hear them going and then replace them as they start to fail. It wasn't until the development of better materials like silicone and also, I guess, putting regular inspection schedules into service checklists, and probably the loss of experience in the old-time mechanical operators, it wasn't until then that leather gasket seals became no more. Developed from chrome pack, this Spokane leather is straight chrome tanned, then heavily grease hot stuffed in the retanning process with a specific grease and wax formula developed by Horween and Nicks together. The formula was designed to make this a work leather that's not so fierce in temper that it can't be used as a casual leather. And in fact, the new greases packed in make it age really well as a casual boot. In this boot, the color is actually called honey, and it's over 3 mils thick, and initially felt stiff and hard to flex. As you can see, after around 100 hours of wear, it has become very flexible, if not fully supple. This is waxed flesh, so the Spokane full-grain leather is turned rough side out and heavily pressed with wax at the tannery, similar to Horween's Chrome XL-based waxed flesh leathers. Even with moderate wear, no work situations, the wax is beginning to wear off in the spots that flex on the shaft and at parts where I've scuffed it on rocks on the trail or at the heel sitting in my vehicle. My impression is that the wax coating is not as thick as that applied on the CXL-based wax flesh, like on my Parkhurst Brown waxed Allens, or my Truman Java wax flesh, or even white cinnamon wax flesh. Those felt hard and shiny when new, whereas these felt more rough out, if you see what I mean. The stitching on the pattern pieces is pretty meticulous. 4 stitches in the quarter, triple on the heel counter cover, single at the collar and lace facings. The backstay that runs from under the heel counter cover and attaches the pull loop at the back is firmly stitched on with Nicks' characteristic inverted V set for stitches. The tongue is fully gusseted using a soft leather, not Chrome XL, that feels like a straight chrome tan. The gusseting makes you fold the tongue P&W style when you lace up. And to protect it, Nicks includes a kiltie in the same Spokane leather. And on this is where you can see what happens when the surface wax rubs off and the nap starts to show through. The shaft is unlined and the reverse is just the grain side. The vamp, however, appears to be lined with a suede leather lining. The toe stiffener is leather, but not very thick, and allows the toe box to soften. The heel stiffener is also leather, and being 3 pieces of leather thick there is very, very solid. The hardware is bright brass, 4 eyelets, then 5 speed hooks topped by a last eyelet at the top. The speed hooks aren't the usual flattened over pieces of leather. They are very solid milled pieces that are immovable. If I have a criticism of the uppers, the kiltie provided is too short for an 8-inch boot. They stop about 3 pieces of hardware down from the top so that when you lace them up, the top of the gusseted tongue is not protected. The laces provided are rawhide leather laces, and they may well be the same as those provided by whites. But I prefer these because they seem sturdier and certainly much more sturdy in comparison with leather laces provided by other brands. Now, these are built on the H&W moderate last, meaning the curve of the arch and hence the arch support is not as aggressive into your arch as in some of their other boots. On my feet, they're really comfortable in the arch. The uppers are connected to the sole construction using the stitch down method of construction. This is where the uppers are lasted and then flared out and then stitched onto the welt or midsole depending on the variant of stitch down used. In this case, it's only stitched down in the front half of the boot. The back half is turned in, glued, stitched and nailed to the leather insole. Now honestly, I'm not sure why it's not a 360 degrees stitch down, other than perhaps it doesn't create a ledge at the heel which might catch on things. However, there's no fear of the back half coming apart, and you can go and watch Nicks's plethora of how it's made videos on their YouTube channel, showing how well fixed the boots are back here. Inside, there are several layers of leather and a leather shank, and everything is glued and nailed into the midsole, which you see from the side is looking like a welt. If you watch their videos, you'll see that at the ball of the foot, instead of using cork, they glue a patch of what looks like foam for comfort. Again, to be honest, there's so much leather under your feet that you don't feel any squish at all. You can see from the double welt stitch at the front that both stitches go all the way through into the outsole. In some double stitch down construction boots, one stitch goes through only the midsole and then the rubber outsole is glued on, and then the second stitch is put through the midsole and the outsole so that it shows only one stitch underneath. The Vibram V100 Commando lug sole is then glued on and stitched on and screwed on with 9 stainless steel screws in the front of the boot and 11 nails into the heel, and I don't know how many nails from inside the boot going into the heel as well. It ain't coming off, despite the ugly worn stitching that you can see under the sole from just a few wears. Now, I know modern glues are amazing. I know there's a mouthful of screws and nails in there, and I know stitching machines with the 2 threads cross over as they stitch through, and I know frayed stitching under the boot is not a worry. But why, oh why, do they not cut a little channel on the lugs? In fact, worse than that, the stitching often bridges the air gap between the lugs so that the first step that you take on a sharp rock catches them and cuts them. Take a look at the Fortis Dakar lasted service boot from Bandung, same V100 outsole. I know that the Bandung outsole stitching is actually stitched by hand with a waxed awl, so you can be much more precise. But what they do is they cut a little channel over the lugs, just a tiny smidgen, and then they stitch into that. And these have been worn much more than these, but the stitching is pristine. Okay, look, don't let me alarm you. Despite looking ugly, there is no chance of this outsole coming off just because the stitches are worn through. As I said, modern glues, cross stitches, nails, screws, it's solid. Before we move on, let's just talk a bit about Leathercare. To some extent, the beauty of waxed flesh is due to the fact that as you wear it, it flexes and the wax rubs off or scrapes off, showing the rough out nap underneath, or ending up in what we all look for, if we're really honest, a beautiful patina. So to some extent, you may not want to reapply wax or even any kind of wax-based balm which might darken the contrasting nap or even flatten it out, literally wiping out that hard-earned wear. Also, this Spokane leather feels so full of waxes and oils that I'm pretty sure that, like Chrome Excel, there's already a lot of protection and conditioning in there, unless you decide to swim across the Bass Strait and have salt leach out the wax. So my recommendation is to do nothing with this leather. It's controversial, I know. Keep it clean for sure. Wipe it with a damp cloth if it gets dirty, even saddle soap it if it gets really dirty. Keep brushing dust and dirt off regularly, and I think you'll be fine. If you do wear this for manual work, then yes, you may need to condition it more and maybe even waterproof it from time to time. Now, Nicks provides a small tub of grease, which come with all your boots, which I think is Obernoff's grease. so use that. Word of warning, the grease will for sure darken the revealed nap and dampen it down. So now let me turn to sizing. Nicks usually suggests measuring your feet using the instructions on their website, so I would do that when you order. However, a quick guide is to go a half down from Brannock, that measuring device that you stand on in shoe stores. My US Brannock size is 8.5 in D width, that's average width. On my right foot, that D width borders on a wider E, but in most boots, I don't feel the difference from a D. Nicks talked to me about the fit in my Parker's collaboration boot, and while that fit, I did feel that the toe was a little long. They suggested that I order a 7.5 in double E width, and that was the perfect suggestion. Going down a full size, but going up in width, doesn't really shorten the length of the boot that much, because the wider width proportionately lengthens the boot so that you don't look like you're wearing stubby pancakes on your feet. Bearing in mind my feet, this is a perfect fit in that size, and while the leather was initially stiff, I never felt any pinching or hot spots, the fear of everyone ordering a boot online. The length from heel to toe was perfect. It was a thumb's width in front of my toes, and the heel to ball length was also perfect. These were comfortable from the unboxing and have got to be more and more so. The leather under your feet feel like it's been built around your feet, provides stability and snug enough protection and support all round without feeling like stiff ski boots. As time goes on, and I'm not even sure these are fully broken in yet, the leather softens and molds to my ankle and shins while the sole just feels made for me. There's not a lot of shock absorption, and let's face it, these were not built to soften the blow, but to support and secure. A pair of Nicks Overlanders currently costs $609 US, but can go up if you option up. Landed in Australia with shipping and charges, they're about 1,200 Aussie. That sounds expensive as a cost, which it is. Not many Australians can afford that for a boot so overbuilt that they will probably not get the best use out of it. But the value you get for that cost is just ridiculous. You'll never buy another boot like this in Australia. Hand-built, aggressively sturdy, totally supportive, secure and comfortable, and with 3mm thick leather and a sole that from top to bottom is a full 1 centimeter of leather and hard rubber at its thinnest part. If you compare it to other P&W boots, take White's for example, a similar work boot, maybe their smoke jumper, is US $625. Their MPs and 350 cruisers and cutters, $750 US. Quality, I dare say, is the same from my experience anyway, but there is a price difference. JK's Super Duty and OTs are around $900 US. So cost-wise, all playing in the same ballpark and all the same toughness and quality for their market. Compare this with other tough-looking, cheaper boots and they win. Now, without casting aspersions, the Craft & Glory 8-inch combat boot does look similar. And while durably built, it's just not in the same league for thickness of leather, layers of leather in the sole, and so on. I would highly recommend them for your first entry into the combat or work boot look. You'll really appreciate it. But they are not built the same, and nobody pretends otherwise. The only issue then is, do you need such a tank of a boot? I sure as hell don't, but I want it. I desire it as a boot collector and wearer. And I am going to get good wear value from these, even if there is no way in holy heck that I'll be using these the way they're intended. So, there you go. Your thoughts? I truly am falling in love with these boots, like you fall in love with that, tough tomboy at school when you were 14. You don't really know why, but they seemed attractive, and it's going to be tough going, but maybe that's what you crave for. I have a lot of boots, but these will be worn more regularly than others, I think. And if you want to see how they wore during my recent week that I spent in Hobart and Tasmania, stay tuned. In fact, sub so you don't miss that video coming to you in 2 parts. And while you're subbing, don't forget to click on my like to help my channel, and to be frank, to make me feel good about myself. Stay safe and happy out there, and I'll see you next week.